Today I'll be doing a review on the Monoprice THX AAA portable headphone amplifier and DAC by Monolith. Inside of that box you get a cardboard box. And this will be where all the accessories are. So it comes included with a bag. The only cable that it comes included would be in this plastic bag. And you also get a thank you card. And for some reason my unit did not come with a user manual. So I think you have to go online to download it. And then the only other accessory would be this power adapter. And you can plug this straight into the wall. And then the only cable that it comes included with is a charging cable. So you get standard USB. So you can plug this into here or into your computer. And then the other end is micro USB. And that plugs into the amp DAC. And it's about 2 or 3 feet long. On the back of the unit we have a charging port and also a data USB micro port. So you plug that into there and then you can plug this into the wall. And then when you do that, there should be a battery bar that lights up and it lets you know that it's charging. And when that image goes away, that would mean that the amp DAC is fully charged. Now also, you can also just plug this straight into your computer as well if you want to charge it. And if you want to play music from the computer, you just swap to this micro USB port, and that's how you play music. It does not include any other accessories, so if you want to hook this up to your phone, you'll have to buy your own cable. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about size. But before we talk about size, the battery life, for some reason on my unit, it only lasts about 6 hours. And then the charge time is also 6 hours. And that's on the micro USB port. So I don't know if they sent me one that has like a bad battery or something, or is it just only 6 hours. If yours lasts longer than mine, please let me know in the description below. So let's go ahead and talk about size. So as you can see, the Monolith is a little bit longer than the Q5. And then also you can see that it's a little wider. And then the thickness is about the same. But I will say that the Q5 sticks out just a little bit more because of this leather piece on the back. There's a slight bulge there. Compared to the topping NX4, you can see the Monolith is quite a bit longer. And the width is just a little wider. And you can see that the NX4 is thinner, just by a little bit. So let's go ahead and talk about build. This has a very good build quality, the Q5. And I would say the THX has about a similar build quality, but there's a few things I can nitpick. For example, on the front here, they put like a glossy finish. You can see that it's brushed, which looks nice, but it is glossy and it attracts fingerprints. And then on the back here we have leather that covers the entire unit, which is very nice, which by the way, the Theo Q5 also has leather on the back, besides this bottom portion here. But the only other thing I can complain about the build quality would be these buttons. Is probably the only thing I don't really like. Is, as you can see, they're a little bit loose, and if you do this, you should hear that they rattle. And then compared to the Q5, it doesn't really jiggle as much. And when you do that, it doesn't make any noise. Otherwise, the build quality is really, really good. Especially the volume knob, which has a rubberized texture, and I really like that. And as you can see, it's flat with the surface here, so it doesn't stick out. And the volume is very smooth and very high quality. And as you can see, we can go from mute all the way to 0 dB, and then it goes into plus 16. And you'll never need to go into the plus range. I'll have the power requirements down in the description. But otherwise, the M1060Cs and the Sennheiser 58Xs need about minus 20 dB, which is about right there. And then the focal lavaliers need about minus 25. And then I forgot what the DT1990s were, but I think they're around minus 15, so they're a little harder to drive. The Hi-Fi Min Edition XXs can also get to about minus 15, and then the T50RPs are about minus 10. Alright, so that's basically build. The only other thing I didn't show you would be what the buttons are. So here we have a menu button, and it also works as a back button on the top. And then we have a forward and back button here for going through the menus. And then we have an enter button here at the bottom. And then on the front here we have our line input, and it also doubles as a optical input. So, and they do not include the accessory to change it, your optical cable to mini optical, but it does include that, which is nice. Because let's say if you're using it on micro USB, and maybe like 2 or 3 years later if the battery dies, you know, you should be able to still use optical. And then over here we have our headphone port, and it's only 3.5 single-ended, no balanced. So that's basically everything for build. So let's go ahead and get into sound quality now. So I compared it against the Topping NX4, the Topping NX5, the iFi Nano, the FIO K3, and I did a little bit of testing against the Q5, but we're not going to really mention against this as much. Now, I would say that the THX AAA by Monoprice has better sound quality than all of those that I just mentioned. So the NX4, NX5, the FIO K3, and the iFi Nano. And those are all on my recommendations list. And this has better sound quality. So let's go ahead and describe the sound. So first up, let's start off with the sound signature. Now this has a very uncolored, clear, clean, crystal clear, transparent sound. And the biggest thing I want to mention that it sounds uncolored. So for example, you're not going to get any warmth or anything like that. Now let's start off with the treble first. Now when I was comparing it to the FIO K3, especially on the single-ended, the FIO K3 has like a soft, a little bit more veiled, particularly in the treble when you're on the single-ended. But when you go balanced, it kind of gets rid of that like veil in the sound. But overall, it still sounded a little veiled and soft compared to the THX AAA, which is basically crystal clear, just transparent treble. And the biggest thing is that it's not really veiled. So you get all the treble that you need very clearly. Now, it's not bright, it's not dark, it's not warm, it's not rolled off, it's not sparkly, it's not metallic. It's just very natural, clean and clear treble. And it doesn't have any of that like veil to it or softness. It does seem a little bit sharp at times, or bright, but that might depend on your headphone. So let's go ahead and talk about bass next. Now the Monoprice THX has very good bass performance. Now the FIO A3, which I had a very long time ago, that's an example of an amplifier that has very lean bass, and it also rolls off into the sub bass. The THX, on the other hand, it does not have any roll off into the sub bass. So it has very good extension. So if you're going to play a song, like a movie soundtrack, that has like very deep bass and it's very rumbly, this is going to sound very, very good for that. It doesn't have any roll off. Next, we also have quantity. Now again, the FIO A3 has like a lean bass. It's not very thick and it's not very full. or anything like that. The THX, on the other hand, now I'm not going to say it's the most full sounding bass, so you're not going to get like a, it's not going to maybe please the bass heads. It's mostly neutral, but it has a lot of quantity. So if you have a headphone or a song that has a lot of bass, this is definitely going to have a pretty good amount of quantity in the bass. Next, let's talk about the sound quality of the bass. Now, the bass on here, it basically blends in with the rest of the audio very well. I wouldn't say it's muddy or bloomy, but it is a bit, it does maybe blend in a little bit with the music. So like it's not going to have the most it's not going to give you the most impact because like I said, it's not emphasized bass. Emphasized bass would mean that maybe it's really thumpy, or like the bass has very good definition to where you can hear the tightness of the bass and the punch. This isn't going to be the most punchy. Well, it can definitely punch a bit. It's just not going to overemphasize it in any way. So the bass on this is very good. So let's go ahead and talk about the vocals now. Now the first 10 minutes of me having this, I noticed a pretty good improvement in vocals. Now I loaded up a video game called Hearthstone, and I was playing some cards, like let's say an ogre, and when you play a card that has a very ogre voice, like you know when Blizzard puts sound effects into the voice, it makes it sound like an ogre. That comes across very good on the THX. Very clean, clear, transparent vocals that have very good texture and detail to the vocals. Also, when comparing to like the NX4, for example, the NX4 you do lose a little bit on that character and just like naturalness that it sounds in the vocals. So this has very good vocals. Also, when I was on my Hi-Fi Min Edition XXs, when I went on the NX4, you can kind of tell that the vocals are laid back, you know, with the rest of the mix. And when I went to the THX AAA, you can tell that on the Hi-Fi Mins that the vocals are mostly neutral to slightly forward, which is a thing that I personally like. So this has very, very good vocals. Alright, so let's talk about some other sound quality characteristics. The first thing is what I really, really like about this amp is that it sounds like water. And I literally mean it, that it kind of sounds like water, because one, it's uncolored, but two, it kind of has a silky liquidness to the sound. Not necessarily overly smooth or anything, because it still has very good detail, which I'll mention that, but it kind of has like a silky liquidness to how it sounds. It makes it sound very like natural and analog in a way. And that's the major thing that I really like about the THX AAA. Next up, detail. Even though it has that liquidiness, which some people might think that that's like overly smooth or anything, it's not overly smooth, because this actually has very good detail and better resolution than the iFi Nano, the NX4, NX5, or even the FIO K3. So this has the most detail out of all those portable amp DACs, which the K3 is a desktop. Now with the detail, you also get a very good improvement with the imaging. Now this has very good detail resolution in the imaging, so there's not a whole lot of dark spots as things move across. Next, we also have sound presentation. Now when you go on the FIO K1, or not the K1, the K3, when you go to single ended to balance, everything opens up and becomes more spacious and more three-dimensional and less 2D. What the THX AAA does is kind of a similar thing, but takes it to another level. So you do kind of get like a 3D effect around your head, but it is still closed in because the soundstage is not emphasized in any way. But I also would mention that the soundstage is not narrow either. I would say the soundstage is on the larger side of things, but it's not emphasized or in any way. Now because it has that three-dimensional sound, it has a very good like sense of just being able to pinpoint where all those instruments in the mix are. So it has very good instrument separation and very good layering. And this is a thing that I really like about the THX. Instead of it being so two-dimensional, you kind of don't really get a whole lot of depth. But with the THX is that you get a good sense of depth within the soundstage. So not just width, but also depth in the layering within that depth. So it has a very good sound to it that I really like. Just everything just falls together like it just sounds very high quality and it's just really good. Alright, so next we're going to talk about the gaming performance on the THX AAA. Now, the gaming, since it has pretty good imaging and because everything's so well like lit in the background, meaning like you can just pinpoint where something's sounding, this has very good gaming performance. Probably one of the better ones I have tried. The other ones that I do like for gaming would be like the Oon X7S. I noticed that like right away that when you're on the XLR, that's pretty good for gaming. And there's quite a few other things that are also pretty good for gaming. Now here's the big kicker though. This has a feature called DAC, which is a surround sound feature. And I'll show you the menus later. Which, by the way, when you turn it on, it takes about 5 or 10 seconds to turn on. So this here, hit enter, and then you hit the up button, and that turns it on, and then you hit the menu back button. And now it's on, and it's in the screen over here now. Now when you turn that on, it's basically a surround sound feature, which basically means it adds a ton of realism to the sound. So not only is it going to be 3D, with it off, it kind of has a sort of a 3D sound, but not really. But when you turn it on, it's basically 3D, but you pop that bubble because it still sounds closed in when you have it off. But when you have it on, it basically exaggerates the soundstage. So the soundstage just becomes like never ending basically. You just hear all around you as far out as you can. And you do end up being in the center of that sound. So when you play music or you're playing games, things are going to be floating around you, including behind your head or on the sides. So for example, I was playing League of Legends, which isn't really a 3D game, but when you have something off screen, like to the left, it kind of sounds like it's coming from a side channel in a surround sound theater. It comes in like the left channel. You don't really think that it's like, you know, it really makes it sound to the side. And then if I was playing like Vermintide, for example, you just get this amazing like immersive experience around your head basically. And with that experience, the imaging becomes insane. Like when you turn the surround sound feature on, the imaging just becomes really precise, like really, really good. And it kind of actually improves the detail for some reason. And it's a very interesting sound, and it can be really good for watching movies as well. So like, you know, when you are watching a movie with surround sound speakers and you have all these sound effects and whatnot, and then in the movie there's also a song, like music playing in the background. When you turn the surround sound feature on, everything is just very seamless. And then when you turn it off, you kind of notice that like the music and the sound effects all get muddled together. So you kind of lose some clarity when you turn it off, and it gets muddled. Now, what are some downsides of the surround sound feature? Well, most people probably not going to like it for music because there is some downsides. For example, vocals, they're going to sound outside your head, like they're coming from like 10 or 20 feet away. So on some songs, it doesn't really sound great. And you can still do that for music or movies and gaming. Another downside is you also lose bass presence as well. So you lose some bass. And there's a few other issues as well. So for music, most people probably would be perfectly happy with it off. But for me, if I want to have fun, because I'm calling it a fun feature, I would maybe turn it on. So for example, let's say if I was listening to the Star Wars remastered soundtrack, it'd be nice to turn that on. Or for example, if I was listening to Subnautica, the original soundtrack, by turning it on, it gives you this really like immersive experience. And with like Star Wars, you can just kind of hear it like an orchestra of just instruments all around. And it's very interesting, and I like it. But I'm perfectly happy with it off for most of the time. But when I'm bored and I'm like, I want to listen to the soundtrack a different way and just have some fun with it, I would turn it on. And for gaming, I really like it for gaming. Like League of Legends, I don't even want to turn it off for League of Legends, for example. I really like the surround sound feature. Now, most of my testing was with it off, by the way. And this thing sounds really, really, really good with that feature off. So that's basically everything I want to talk about this in terms of sound quality. Before I show you the other features, this is basically going to be my top recommendation for a portable amplifier and DAC for your headphones. It beats the NX4, it beats the iFi Nano, it beats the K3, the Q1 Mark II, and the NX5. Now, I will have to do a review on the Feel Q5. Now, the only spoiler I'll tell you is that Q5 does not have a clean, clear, transparent, uncolored sound. The Q5 is more colored, and that's basically the only thing I'm going to say. But I would say the sound quality comes close to the THX. I will mention that. And also, they actually came out with a THX AAA amp module, which is this thing here. You put it on here, and you can actually make this THX as well. And this already comes with Bluetooth and balanced. It's going to have the 4.4 millimeter balanced on that, by the way. But it will cost more money, though. I will point that out. So this would be a good competition, even with the THX or without the THX module. But it will cost more money. And that's the main thing I want to point out, is they did do some cost savings with this, like not including any accessories or putting balanced on it with dual DACs or dual amps, and no Bluetooth or any of that. So they did put some cost savings. But you can get this on sale for $250. I paid $230 with a coupon, and maybe coming up Black Friday, if this goes as cheap as $200, or maybe you buy an open box for around $200, this is a very good deal, and I would highly recommend it. So let's go ahead and go over the features now. Hopefully you can see that. So you press this menu button here on the top. You press it again, and then you can go through the 4 pages of features. So there's the surround sound feature that I showed you. So you just press enter and you can turn it on or off. Yeah, EQ. Then you also got dynamic range compression. I'm not going to show you that because it compresses the audio and you don't want to do that. But that's what it looks like. And then you also have settings. So you got auto input on or off. And then you have 3 DAC filters, normal, slow 1, and slow 2. That doesn't really make too much of a difference, but if you need to know, when you put it on slow, you might get a more rolled off sound, but you're not going to probably notice it, but you will get more aliasing, and but it does remove the pre-ringing. Overall, I'll just leave it on the normal, which is the fast roll off, because you don't get the aliasing. And then you also have reset all. So you switch this to yes, and then you hold down the enter button, and then the unit will turn off, and then you'll have to turn it off and then back on. And then resets. And then you also have a about page. And by the way, I want to mention that there's no firmware update for this, and there's no drivers for it. So even though the DAC is capable of doing 768 in DSD, I did not test that because I don't use anything above 192 kilohertz. But at the moment they don't have a driver for the DAC, so it is plug and play with Windows. Otherwise, the only other thing to show you would be the EQ. So you get shelf EQ. So you get your low frequency gain, and then you can plus it by 6 dB. And then you can also change your hertz from 60 to 200 hertz. So you can go plus 6 dB or minus 6 dB. And then you can go from 60 hertz all the way up to 200. So anything that's like, let's say you put it at 200, that means it will EQ everything that's 200 or below. And then for the high frequency, it's basically anything above that. And then you can do plus 6 or minus 6. So, and then this goes from 5 to 12, I believe. And that's basically it. Now, I will want to mention that when you put it on 200 hertz and you do plus 6 dB, the bass does start to get a little bit muddy and bloated, and there is some distortion. So I'd recommend a lower frequency. So the closer you get to 60 hertz, and then the closer you get to 60 hertz, then the higher dB you can use. And then you got these other EQs, PEQs. You get 3 of them. And I do want to mention that this comes with no way of saving your profiles. So I would like if there was a firmware update for that. And basically what you can do is you can just choose a frequency that you want to boost or deduct by plus 6 dB or minus 6 dB. And then you can adjust the Q factor, which adjusts the frequency range. So if you want to make it wider or more of a narrow boost or cut. And that's basically it. So that's basically everything I want to talk about. And the only deal breaker with this unit, I will have to say, is as a portable unit, I do want to mention this, is that this volume knob is very easy to turn. So you can accidentally like max out the volume and blow up your headphones. So I would like to see a firmware update so that they can lock that. But otherwise, thank you for watching.